Hi, I'm Rich Sains, and this is the Procurement Conversation. In this series, I've been fortunate to speak with inspirational young procurement leaders from different sectors, roles and regions. By sharing their stories, we want more people to hear about procurement, including the leaders of tomorrow. Welcome to the Procurement Conversation. This week, as part of our Young Leaders series, we're talking to Karla Harris, who's Value Creation Senior Manager at PwC. Hi, Karla.
Hi, Rich. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Karla, how did you get into procurement and why didn't you do something else?
I hate to be another one of these people, but like many, I presume I fell into it. Classic example of I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went through uni not even really knowing what I wanted to do. I actually originally applied to finance grad scheme at BP. And unfortunately, perhaps I should actually say fortunately now, there was a little bit of a mix up on their end. And I ended up being moved to the procurement grad scheme without even really knowing what procurement was. And over 10 years later, I'm still here today.
Brilliant. And what is it you love about it?
Firstly, I'd probably say the tangibility of results. With procurement, you often see the fruits of your labor, whether that be reduction of cost, reduction of carbon, even sometimes risk. And I think it's really satisfying when you can see the outputs of your input. Another thing that I love is the fact that procurement enables so many different types of role. So whether that be industry procurement, consultancy, for example, or a different focus, be cost or carbon, or even different sectors, a lot goes on, obviously, the private sector and the public sector. And if you were to calculate the number of unique combinations of any of the above, that accounts for a huge number of focus areas. So I guess procurement is really malleable. I'd also say variety, a huge plus of procurement. No 2 days are the same, and you don't even have time to be bored in procurement. And I'd say most days, even 10 plus years into my career, I'm still learning something new at work. And there probably aren't many jobs out there where you could say that you are still learning something new every day. Trying to think what else. I would say the variety of people that we meet. For example, in the last few weeks alone, I've spoken with colleagues and clients from, off the top of my head, Estonia, Spain, US, Middle East, all ranges of the organization, including CFOs, CPOs, CSOs. I guess procurement is incredibly far-reaching, both geographically and organizationally, which makes it a super interesting function to be in. But yeah, that's probably why I love procurement.
Procurement, you can do anything you want to do. You can go to any country, you can be in any industry. Do you find that being in consultancy, you get the best of both worlds in that you're probably doing multiple things for multiple different clients and different sectors, different industries, different countries, continents? Do you get a really good blend like that?
Absolutely. And I'd say probably more so since leaving industry. So I did actually start my career out in industry with BP and oil and gas, and then moved into consultancy where I did for a number of years more public sector consulting, and then more recently into the private sector. So yeah, absolutely. Clients from all over the world. I've had several travel opportunities that have taken me over the globe. Yeah, lots of variety and lots of exposure.
And is there such a thing as a normal day? And if so, what does it look like? Or is it just a little bit?
Oh,
It could be anything at any point.
Rich, the only thing that is the constant between 2 days for me is a cup of coffee. And that's actually probably why I love my job. My days are so varied. So I guess probably like most, a lot of it is spent on calls and chatting to people, whether that meetings with clients or colleagues. Some days, what I actually really enjoy is doing things like workshops and think tanks, especially the areas that I'm looking into at the moment. I've recently started upskilling in ESG, so it's meant that I've actually had a lot of training days and seminars and times away at events and stuff. So yeah, again, no 2 days are the same, and lots of variety.
Anything you don't like so much?
Oh, thankfully, I'd say there's not too much that I dislike about procurement, hence why I've lasted in the career as long as I have. But I guess sometimes getting stakeholders on board with doing things differently can at times be a bit challenging. And breaking down that this is how we've always done things around here. So this is the way we're going to continue doing them. So sometimes it's about really using your influence and your people skills to bring people around to a different way of thinking. But yeah, I'd say generally low appetite for change or low appetite for novel ideas can be frustrating, but even more, I say, when you can see the benefits and the upside of doing things just that little bit differently. But yes, it's all a part of the game of procurement that we like to play.
You mentioned some skills there. What would you say are the key skills that we need more of in procurement?
I think I'd actually probably say a challenging mind. Again, do things differently, be curious, suggest things that haven't been done before, and think outside the box if you really want to have an impact and create value. And I'd say related to that, another biggie is communication and emotional intelligence. It's what I would call
Mm.
the chameleon analogy. So we need to be masters of adapting our style, our presence, and our language to the stakeholders that we're working with. We work with a huge variety of stakeholders, all different parts of an organization, industry, sectors. So we need to be the masters of adapting our style, our presence, and our language to the stakeholders that we're working with, which I guess leads to my next point, and it's something that's maybe sometimes overlooked, is just the simple ability to listen. Think listening
Mm.
really carefully to stakeholder problems so that you can get to the root cause of how to solve them whilst keeping them obviously on board and engaged is incredibly important in procurement. I guess we've got to take stakeholders on the journey of change and innovation. And that process is so much easier if they're working with you and not against you. And that's often because they feel listened to. When they do feel listened to, they trust you. They want you to be part of the
Mm.
solution. And that's where we can really have impact and see engagement improve and people start to involve procurement early in their processes. So I think, yeah, getting to that point where stakeholders are proactively reaching out to you to help because you've listened to them and help take them on a journey. So yeah, I'd say that's the kind of key skills that we need.
Yeah, definitely. That's always a good measure, actually, is when stakeholders are coming to you and being proactive
Absolutely.
and all.
But shame it doesn't
You know you're
happen
doing
all the
something right.
time, every time.
I know. And is there anything you do specifically to develop yourself?
Yeah, I guess something that's quite personal to me, and I'm often very open about this and share it with peers and people that I'm coaching or mentoring, is that in terms of self development, it for me was about beating down imposter syndrome. It's something
Right.
that I struggled with in varying intensities throughout my career, less so recently, but more when I was on my growth journey. But for me, I think the solution has been getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that is
Mm.
almost the beauty of procurement. Like, again, it's that exposure and that feeling of people look to you for answers. And sometimes that can be quite daunting. But I guess you just have to master resilience. And something which I often tell people that I'm coaching or mentoring is it's only failure when you fail to try again. So you should always, in procurement, keep looking for alternative solutions to the same problem and don't just give up at the first time of being a try the different door, as it were.
I think whenever I've spoken about soft skills before, people have always said actually resilience, persistence are really important because quite often you're trying to get people to do things that they're not too keen on doing. So yeah, as you say, try again and until you get to the right place with it.
Exactly. And I think it's also incredibly important to learn by doing as well and learning from those around you. I don't know what you've seen, Rich, but from my perspective, very few people seem to leave procurement. And I think we've got a lot
Mm.
to learn from the people that have been in the industry, say 20, 30, 40 years in procurement. So yeah, definitely
Yeah.
learn from those around us.
Yeah. And what would you say you're most proud of in your career?
Oh, that's a bit of fun. I guess for me personally, it's that probably a little bit slightly different actually. And for me, it's more about creating a sense of community in which people can thrive,
Mm.
encouraging success in others, basically. And that's where I get my kick out of my career and what I feel is what makes me proud. Something that I've always prioritized and I learned early on is that you can achieve a lot more as a cohesive team than, say, as an individual, especially in
Mm.
procurement. I think, yeah, teamwork really does make the dream work sometimes. And
Mm.
I'd say there's a few individuals that spring to mind who I feel I've nurtured and watched them progress really quickly in their careers. And that's incredibly rewarding and what makes me proud. But I guess you're probably looking for a more tangible example.
Well,
So
that's definitely tangible, that is as well. But yeah.
exactly. But I'll give you a few. For example, I've done some really inspiring ESG project in my career. I did one for a county council in the south whereby I led a market engagement for the first on street electric vehicle charging scheme. So that was incredibly interesting and exciting to see that come to fruition. I also worked on another project for one of the British ministries in which I was part of a feasibility study team for building solar PV farm. So this was essentially looking at the irreducible spare capacity land pockets in England for the client and understanding where we could put essentially fields of solar panels. And then I guess the other phase of that project was then looking at so that energy that was generated, how could we get it to other entities via off-grid private network? So again, something which if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would I ever be doing feasibility studies for solar PV farms for British ministry? The answer would probably be no. But again, that's the beauty of procurement. And on that project, I think the whole team felt proud in that we were setting precedent for change and how the UK can really progress towards a more sustainable future, which was, yeah, incredibly exciting to be part of. So, yeah, there's a couple.
Brilliant. Yeah, they're fantastic examples. Getting involved in those innovative projects, especially ones where you're pushing a particular agenda, ESG agenda, or whatever, when you're able to do good and deliver value as well, that's always a great thing.
Absolutely very rewarding.
And what would you say is your period of greatest growth?
I guess for me, it was leaving industry and heading into the consulting world. It was a really steep learning curve, one which required me to really tighten my procurement skills because essentially you're going from doing things for yourself and for your own organization to then doing those things for paying clients. And I guess that adds a certain element of pressure, which certainly catalyzes the growth period. And it was a time where I managed to gain a lot of new skills very quickly. I'd also say, coming back to the procurement theme here, every project of my career has enabled really great growth, which is it's why I love procurement. Like the skill set of a procurement professional remains the same, and that is the constant. But it's the what that changes. It's what we're buying. It's what we're influencing. It's what we're innovating. So, for example, just some of the industries I've worked in telecommunications, I've worked in utilities, even marine projects, which incredibly complex. You often feel like, are the project team speaking a foreign language? But it forces you to upskill really quickly. And as I say, it stops you from getting bored and you're just learning a phenomenal amount because you're in new industries and new sectors all of the time, which is just keeps the variety.
There is a very steep learning curve, isn't there? Especially if you're doing different projects in different areas. I think sometimes we can get into a thing of if you're doing things that are very similar all the time. And that's one of the reasons why in teams I've worked in, sometimes we push people to work in different categories or cross category or whatever. And actually, those are the guys that they get very fast development in working like.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, the cross category working, it results in greater exposure, doesn't it? So absolutely, I completely agree with that. I think, yeah, procurement professionals should almost seek to change up their categories or change up the industries that they're working within just so that they can get that growth and exposure.
Definitely. And what do you see as the external perception of procurement?
The cost savers. No, I think in the last, say, 10, 15 years, we've come on bound as a function. And I feel like we've really made progression in having that strategic seat at the table now, and especially in terms of C-suite. But I think that has been catalyzed by obviously some large world events, like if we take COVID or the Ukraine war, for example. That's really magnified the importance of supply chains and for procurement as a function. But I would say it's starting to feel that just as we've achieved like that really strategic seat at the table, goalposts are changing. So now we're going to be faced with ESG challenges next. And as procurement people, I think we really need to get ahead of the curve and get ready for when the C-suite start looking to procurement to solve the next big non-cost challenge that comes down the pipeline.
Definitely. And what would you like to see next?
Probably specialize in the circular economy and ESG without going too heavy. ESG is an area which I feel very passionately about, and it's something that I've been focusing on a lot recently. I guess I like having the impact of all stages of the procurement cycle to do things more sustainably in terms of the issue, like thinking with stakeholders, how could we do this in a better way that is a lot kinder to our planet? So yeah, definitely ESG specializing is where I'd like to go. But then I also feel tech is another big area. Procurement professionals, we need to get comfortable with kind of the tech solutions that are available to make procurement as a function more efficient. And also we need to know what's going on in other spaces and other functions of the organization to help them on their journey too, to more efficient processes and automation, etc., and implementation of tech.
Yeah, I think agree on both of those. I think if you're involved in either of those, there's an exciting future. And yeah, you'll be very busy over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, definitely.
Absolutely.
What advice would you give to someone who is considering a career in procurement?
But from my personal viewpoint, I think it's a lot easier to learn procurement from an industry perspective. So if we're talking to young people looking to get into procurement for the first time, I think start in an industry role. I personally find it a lot easier to do by doing. It's like the analogy of driving a car. It's a lot easier to learn actually in one than being told how. So yeah, the transition to consultancy was what made it much easier, essentially, through living and breathing a procurement role in industry for a few years. because it meant that I had that relatable experience when I started consulting. I'd also say, as a piece of advice to people looking to start a career in procurement, that pick an industry or sector for your first role that you actually have either an affinity to or a personal enjoyment in, because when you couple that with the kind of skills that you need in a procurement role, that's when you're going to have a really good fun time. And at the end of the day, work should be fun. And I think when you're passionate about something, it makes that kind of journey far more enjoyable. Then the last thing I'd say is just, if you are considering it, just immerse yourself. Attend some procurement webinars or talks. There's so many on LinkedIn to choose from. Obviously, your podcast is great, and it can really help people to understand the importance of the role of procurement and what it plays in organizations and global supply chain.
Are you someone who would have a 5 to 10 year career plan, or are you someone who takes opportunities as they come?
I would definitely go with the latter. I think I've followed a bit of a pattern where I didn't really have a plan. Even in terms of going to university, I don't want to say I dropped out of school early, because that wasn't quite the case, but I progressed to university early. So I didn't hang around for sixth form and actually managed to get a clearing place at university, which meant I could leapfrog into university early to go and start on with my business degree. So it was a case of, there was a couple of subjects with a space, which one did I like the sound of the best? And that was the business management course, which I ended up doing. So following on from that pattern, again, wanted to go into finance, ended up in procurement. So no, I think it's all about being able to flex. But procurement, you have to be agile. You have to almost have that mindset that doesn't get stuck in a particular pattern or way you're thinking. You have to be able to, excuse the term, or pivot into what the next thing is. And I think also, again, coming back to what I said earlier, it's just do what you enjoy, because it'll make your career so much more fun.
How do you think we can get more young people into procurement?
So for me, I think it's about rebranding and repositioning how procurement gets value from an organization. There's probably so many young people out there that they still don't know what procurement is. I was one of those people. And I guess the question is, how do we change that? And for me, I think we have to do that by understanding what drives young people, for example, Gen Z. So we need to almost shape our marketing efforts and shout about the profession into a language they understand. We solve some of the world's biggest problems. COVID was a perfect example of that. Like, supply chains are at the key to many of these problems, and we need to make it relatable. So I think if young people understand the gravitas of procurement and how it impacts, say, their daily lives, it's much more likely to get them excited. And finally, I think it's really important that they have role models, and we produce things like case studies and profiles about what we do, because we do so much more than just cost transformation or just buying things and negotiating. And I think this really needs to almost penetrate and start before even, say, a grad program. Like, we need to be at school career fairs, we need to be at university roadshows, even student placement. I did a student placement in accounts back when I was trying to pursue a finance career. And that, again, it can shape a young person's mind so greatly. So yeah, those are the things that I think we need to be doing.
Brilliant. Thanks for talking to us today, Karla. Good to talk.
Thanks, Rich. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Do like and share and subscribe to hear the next procurement conversation.